there's not an actual neurotypical brain. Sure, there is statistical averages, but that's a mathematical example. There's not a literal brain that can be held up as the normal sample. There's no one brain that fits that mold. There are simply variations in wiring of the brain. And just because there's a difference in wiring doesn't mean that a person necessarily has a disorder. Welcome to the Foster Your Voice podcast with me, Christy Foster. After a 30-year career in music and theater, I never imagined I'd be coaching trial attorneys. But once I entered your world, I quickly realized how critical and underutilized voice is in the courtroom. The truth is, you don't win trials with brute strength. You win with your voice. I'll give you tools to unlock your voice so you can communicate not just with purpose, but on purpose. If you want quick action tips to help you stay calm and in control, keep jurors engaged, and inspire your listeners to action, all through the power of your voice, you're in the right place. I'm Christy Foster, and I'm here to help you foster your voice. Hello, Foster fam. So glad you're here, and I want to invite you to be with me in other places as well. I'd love to be connected via email, where I can send you weekly vocal tips and notices of these new episodes. I've also got some things in the works for a little later this year, and I want to make sure you are on the front end of getting all the deets. So visit fostervoicestudio.com and get on my mailing list. I'm also pretty active on Instagram and Facebook. So if you want daily tips and tricks, just some quick action ideas and short form motivation to take you on your path to vocal mastery, find me over on those platforms. Send me a DM and start following me there. My handle is at Foster Voice Studio, all one word, Foster Voice Studio. So I'll look forward to seeing you on the socials. In each of these weekly episodes, I like to share with you from my field of training and expertise, of course, but I also like sharing things that I'm learning right along with you. I have found that my learning gets solidified when I can teach what I'm learning. I don't know if you experience that too. It's just how it's always worked for me. I became a way better vocal performer once I began teaching vocal performance. So, last week we talked about the process of learning. That is how we move from knowledge acquisition to knowledge assimilation. And I shared just how frustrating that experience can be. I want there to be a direct correlation from knowing information about a goal I'm trying to attain to being able to attain that goal. And it frustrates me to no end that that's just not how it works. And I am pouting a little bit. Well, after sharing all this with my coach, she sent me a reel that she came across that just helped make a powerful perspective shift. I'll link the post in the show notes, but it was basically this. They drew a stick figure on one side of the paper and a straight arrow pointing to the word goal that was in a circle on the other side of the page. A nice direct path, my actions leading me straight to the goal. That's how I want it to work. But in reality, the second diagram she drew was a better representation of what actually happens. So she drew the same stick figure on the left and the word goal on the right, but instead of circling the word goal, she drew a circle around the person. Then she drew another circle around the person, slightly bigger than the first, and another bigger circle, and another, and another. She kept drawing concentric circles until the circle was encompassing the word goal. You see, with each circle, small growth was happening. a little new learning, a little expansion, and then a little bit more small growth, and then a little more until the person had grown to the point where the goal was attained. All the small changes along the way expanding the person until they eventually reached their goal. The first diagram was all about doing, but the second diagram was about becoming. It was such a powerful visual lesson for me and helped create maybe some grace and some patience for the process. Achieving a goal isn't about a direct line, it's about me growing, me changing, me maturing. She ended her video with a reminder that your goals are not to get, your goals are to grow. You know what I hate? Being misunderstood. It's actually one of my biggest fears, if I'm honest, right up there with birds. Yes, I'm afraid of birds. Leave me alone about it already. Being misunderstood is just the worst, though. Trying to communicate something and seeing that it's just not landing the way you intend. Too harsh of tone with your kid or spouse that ended up setting them off. A thinking face that got interpreted as annoyance or irritation and ended up shutting down the conversation and leaving you baffled. It's so frustrating in our personal lives, but in the courtroom, your mismatched communication profile could break your case and lose you a deserving verdict. So, I've created a free guide to get you thinking about the emotional profiles you create. It's a printable guide to help you 10x your communication impact by mastering 6 emotional profiles for clear and authentic connection. I break down the 6 core emotions: happy, sad, love, pride, anger, and fear by giving you face, body, and breathing cues. Plus, I show you exactly which point on a 1 to 10 scale you should be with your pitch, pace, melody, volume, and tone in order to authentically capture the center of that core emotion. The link to get your free guide is in the show notes or by simply going to my website, fostervoicestudio.com. Don't wait to clear up your part of miscommunication and misunderstandings. Get your free download today. One of the things I love about coaching with trial attorneys is that I get to learn. I am what would be considered a regular, everyday juror type person. That's one of the strengths that I bring into coaching, and actually one of the highest values I can give in consulting. I am potentially someone who would be in the jury pool. If I was called for jury duty, I would be a really earnest participant. I have a really strong sense of duty that governs me. And so I would give it my best to pay attention, to stay focused, to listen well, stay engaged, and participate. Because I know this about myself, I'm able to tell my clients when I'm really struggling to track with them. What you just said is confusing or too wordy. Is there a simpler way to say that? Oop, that sounds like legalese. That's not how regular people talk. What can you say instead? Beyond just tracking what you're saying, I often tell them, okay, my brain just went sideways for a second. Either what they said or how they gestured made my brain go away from what they were saying and into my problem solving space. Or I got bored or distracted and I stopped listening. We then stop and problem solve why I got bored or distracted, and we make the adjustments. So I'm a juror they get to practice with. Because of this, I have a real heart for jurors. That's a real passion point I bring into my trial consulting. I know I want to be supported, equipped, and empowered, and I want that for all jurors. That desire has fueled my drive to research how people learn. But here's the thing, we all learn in slightly different ways. I've become really curious about not just the styles of learning, but about neurodiversity and how it's represented in the standard jury pool. Now, I am nowhere near an expert in this, not by a long shot. I'm just beginning my research and my discovery, so I'm not speaking today with any type of authority. But what I do want to do is prompt you, a trial attorney, to consider this diversity and make strategic efforts moving forward to be more inclusive and attentive to this issue. Neurodiversity is a continuous and developing conversation. I mean, even the language we use around it is evolving. For instance, I'm trying really hard to say neurodiversity instead of neurodivergence. Neurodivergence is still commonly used and is neutral to a lot of folks. But for some, it suggests that there is a standard, a normal, that someone has strayed off course. This suggestion then leads to the implication that they are wrong in some way, substandard, not normal, but divergent from the norm. Now, I just attended a Science on Tap lecture in my neighborhood. I don't know if you have Science on Tap in your area, or maybe it's just an Oregon, Washington thing, but it's a group that hosts science-based lectures in partnership with venues that serve beer and snacks, and they're trying to make learning fun and create more of a casual vibe. And I really enjoy them and attend whenever I can. So this particular lecture was called The Wonderful World of Neurodiversity. Aren't we all just a bit unique? And the presenters showed that there's not an actual neurotypical brain. Sure, there is statistical averages, but that's a mathematical example. There's not a literal brain that can be held up as the normal sample. There's no one brain that fits that mold. There are simply variations in wiring of the brain. And just because there's a difference in wiring doesn't mean that a person necessarily has a disorder. I mean, think of ADD, ADHD, OCD, all of these diverse ways of acquiring and processing information that we've named disordered. The Science on Tap presenters really brought home the truth about how language shapes our perceptions around neurodiversity and can do a disservice to us all. We are all unique and have unique ways of obtaining, processing, and internalizing information. All things you want your jurors doing. So it would behoove you to consider the obstacles that they face when called to jury duty, and then what are the options for affecting real change. So, what are the obstacles? Well, standardized jury instructions read aloud, and they're so long. And most of the time, the judge keeps a really flat vocal affect. I mean, I've listened to judges and just died inside, wishing I could work with them on their vocals. If you are a judge and would like to work on your courtroom communication, send me a DM. Inclusion and accommodation for jury instructions would maybe look like providing written and visual formats, not just auditory formats, using plain language and checking for understanding. Rule-oriented folks want to do the right thing and follow the instructions to the letter of the law, so to speak, but the system by which they are delivered makes it really challenging. Another protocol that does not take neurodiversity into consideration is standardized note-taking policies or bans on note-taking. Writing and drawing have been proven to be significant and necessary tools for effective information processing. Any kind of one-size-fits-all procedure or expectation, including the manner in which deliberations are structured, will negatively impact decision making that leads to justice. Okay, but that's the court, Christy. I'm not sure what I can do to affect change for those things. All right, fair enough. So here are some things that you can do as a trial attorney. In voir dire, ask open-ended questions. Avoid strictly yes or no questions, as they require everyone have the same interpretation of the question. I mean, in the off chance that you use ambiguous or confusing language in your question, just the off chance, there will be some who will be absolutely paralyzed by the need to answer solely yes or no, with no room for asking for clarification or offering an alternative response. Be mindful also of body language biases. Some jurors just struggle with eye contact or facial expressiveness. And the temptation is to think that they are against you. So what do? You kick them off. Is it possible that you just kicked off a juror that would have been really good for your case? Yes, it's entirely possible. So check your bias at the door. Pay attention to your own nonverbal communication and don't infer meaning into their body language. Now, I talk a lot about the power of pausing, but how much more important is it when considering inclusion of a neurally diverse jury panel? Allow for a pause after asking questions to accommodate different processing speeds. Everyone needs you to pause, but err on the side of longer than you want in order to bring folks along with you. Well, this is true in opening as well, and just throughout trial process. Vary your pace to support different processing speeds. Use a mix of verbal and visual communication tactics, but make sure to eliminate legal jargon and avoid overcomplicating your sentences. Break information into small, digestible chunks, and then be really intentional with your body language. Record yourself or work with a coach to make sure that your gestures are not only clear and motivated, but that they reinforce your message and help you link your audience to the information. Finally, in your visuals, like a flip chart or PowerPoints, make sure that you are consistent with formatting and color coding. Remember, you know what you're talking about, and it all makes perfect sense to you. But for someone who's just hearing for the first time or has zero frame of reference and no formal experience on the topic, you have to keep things extra basic and be super intentional with visual clarity. Again, run your slides past someone you work with or work with a coach on this. Have them tell you where they're getting confused, if the order of the pictures makes sense, or even just ask where the elements are distracting to them. These are all things I regularly do with my coaching clients. And if you don't have a coach or would be interested in exploring what coaching could look like for you, just send me an email, Christy@fostervoicestudio.com. I'd love to discuss options with you or even get you signed up for a free vocal assessment to help you determine your strengths and maybe some areas for growth. Look, I understand that in our current political climate, there's a lot of controversial and divisive discourse around DEI. If you want jurors to stay engaged and develop the rapport with them that you're looking for, pay attention. Be willing to do things differently. Get creative. And keep fostering your voice. Thanks for pulling up a seat with me today and for being part of the Foster fam. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so you don't miss a single episode. And while you're at it, go ahead and leave a review or a comment so I can give you a shout out on a future episode. During the week, you can find me on Instagram at Foster Voice Studio, where I'm dropping little nuggets of vocal technique and leadership wisdom. You can also join my mailing list by visiting fostervoicestudio.com or by clicking the link in the show notes. I'll send a weekly vocal tip every Tuesday directly to your inbox. Until then, keep fostering your voice.